Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Sex is just sex. That was my first thought when I caught sight of Becky, my Becky, gliding down the church aisle in her white gown all those years ago. I remember the smell of lilacs in the air, and the dull burn in my gut from too much whiskey the night before. But none of that mattered when she appeared. I saw her smile, the gentle curve of her lips as she locked eyes with me. She was radiant. I was terrified, and I was so sure that nothing would ever break us. In the moment, I might have whispered to myself that if we had each other, everything else would fall into place. Fool's hope. Sometimes, late at night, I still see that scene like a grainy old film reel in my mind. Becky in white, me in black, two awkward kids on the edge of something big. It felt like stepping off a cliff, not knowing if I'd fly or crash. Well, eventually I crashed. But ironically, the moment of impact came when I opened her email and found a dinner reservation for two, scheduled for a night I'd been out of town. I discovered it in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. I was supposed to be working from home, going through sales reports. Instead, I was searching our shared inbox for a receipt I'd lost. I never expected to see the subject line. Reservation confirmed. Table for two. Candlelight. Just a few words, but they sparked a wildfire of doubt in me. My name wasn't on that booking. The date matched precisely the night I flew out to pitch the Henderson deal in Boston. I tried to rationalize it. Must be a misunderstanding. Maybe she planned a surprise for when I returned. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. The truth has a way of punching you when you're not looking. Her absence that night, her tired voice over the phone, the way she had said she was just going to bed. Don't worry about me, honey. I'm exhausted. The tone, the clipped finality. I even remembered telling her I'd call once I checked in at the hotel, and she said, sure, but never picked up. Now it all made sickening sense. I wanted to lose my temper right then, punch a hole in the wall, but something in me froze. Maybe I was afraid of the words that might come spilling out if I allowed myself to scream. Maybe I was afraid she'd deny it, or worse, laugh. Instead, I closed the browser, sat there at the desk, and stared at the blank wall. A quiet fury bubbled behind my eyes. It felt like a bullet lodged just under the surface of my skin, hot, throbbing, impossible to ignore. I forced myself to breathe. Inhale, exhale. I recalled how she'd laughed on our wedding day. She had teased me for forgetting our vows at the hotel. I'd run back in a panic, rummaging through the bag to find that folded sheet of scribbled promises. I'd do anything to be that man again, the man who believed wholeheartedly in the power of love. Now, love felt more like a sickness. I confronted her, but only in my imagination. In reality, I kept silent. It was the strangest response, looking back on it, to say nothing. To act as if I had no idea. But I wasn't ready to show my cards. For the next few days, I'd watch her, study her. Every time she touched her phone, I'd notice a flicker in her eyes. If she smiled at a text, I'd die a little inside. And the worst part, she looked happier, a hidden glow in her cheeks, a certain tension in her step. She wasn't tired anymore. I knew why. It was around that time we got the paternity test in the mail. Mr. Whitfield, you have a child support matter to address. That was the gist. Something from the lab. At first, I thought it was a scam or an error, but it was addressed specifically to me. My curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. And there it was, a statement that essentially said I wasn't a match to the child I believed was mine. My son, the boy with my name on his birth certificate, the kid who used to tug on my pant leg whenever he wanted to be picked up. The test said we were unrelated, completely, absolutely. I felt my heart tear in half. The edges burned. All those nights I'd read him bedtime stories, all those times he'd thrown his arms around my neck. The lullabies I used to sing, the baby crib I built in the garage by hand. An entire dimension of fatherly love turned into a farce. How many nights had I prayed for that boy's future, taught him to catch a ball, or told him stories about my own childhood. And to think, that entire time, Becky knew, or maybe she had doubts, but she never told me. She never gave me the courtesy of honesty. After that discovery, I stopped breathing. Not physically, of course, but emotionally. I went numb, like I was on autopilot. I'd wake up, go through the routine, but inside, I was decaying. My mind wandered back to our wedding. Did she know this would happen? Did she realize her vow to be faithful was just a hollow arrangement of words? One evening, I followed her. She said she had to go to a school meeting. I trailed her car down the quiet suburban streets, headlights off, heart pounding so hard I was sure she'd hear me. She parked near a well-known restaurant. The sign out front was subtle, lush greenery around, candlelit windows, private dining, reservations only. My pulse hammered. I slipped out of my car, staying hidden behind a row of hedges. I swear I could hear my own breathing echo in the silence. And then I saw him. Tall, academic look, a bit older than me maybe, with glasses and a confident stride. Nathan. I recognized him from the department's holiday party last year. He was an English professor or something. Becky emerged from her car, hesitated, looked around. Then she rushed over to him. He greeted her with a kiss, not on the cheek, but a deep, unmistakably intimate kiss that spoke volumes. My stomach lurched. I pressed my palm over my mouth, trying not to make a sound. There it was. Confirmation I never wanted. My eyes stung. My head spun. Their conversation was low, urgent, full of stolen laughter. She looked at him the way she'd once looked at me. I couldn't hear much, but I saw enough. Her fingers tracing his collar, his hand around her waist. The intimacy was palpable, electric. They entered the restaurant. I stood there in the darkness, shaking. In that moment, I felt the last shred of my illusions tear away. Sex is just sex. That's what people say to justify a fling. But this felt like more. The way she leaned into him, the way he guided her inside with gentle confidence. This was emotional, and I realized, with a twist of nauseating agony, that she was no longer just my wife. She was something else. A liar, a traitor, a stranger. And me. I was the fool in the shadows, suffocating on the truth. I wanted to kick down those doors, flip their candlelit table, scream at them both for turning my life into a punchline. Instead, I found myself walking backward, step by step, until I was practically running to my car. My heart roared in my ears, my vision blurred. I got behind the wheel and sat there, fists clenched around the steering wheel, tears dripping down my cheeks, though I'd never admit that to anyone. My jaw ached from grinding my teeth. I wanted to smash something, throw myself off a cliff, or maybe just vanish. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the edge of town, near a deserted baseball field where I used to coach Little League. I stared at the empty diamond under the floodlights. Some nights, that place felt alive with echoes of laughter and cheering. Tonight, it was silent as a grave. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I barely recognized myself. Eyes red, face twisted with anger and pain. I said to my mirror self, "Is this how it ends?" My own voice sounded alien. I sat there for hours, until the lights shut off and the diamond sank into darkness. Then I drove home like a ghost returning to haunt the living. Becky was already there, asleep in bed or faking it. The house was too quiet. Every tick of the clock sounded like a gunshot. I undressed mechanically, brushed my teeth, stared at my reflection again. This time I noticed the lines on my face, how my shoulders slumped in defeat. I asked myself why I was trembling, why I felt so unmoored. In the reflection, I saw a man who had lost everything but refused to show it. I don't remember sleeping, but morning came, and I still had no plan. I decided to do something, anything, to regain control. So I cleaned the garage, a mundane task, but somehow it felt right. I sorted tools, threw out old paint cans, reorganized junk in labeled boxes. Each clang of metal hitting the trash can was a small release of frustration. I tackled the kitchen drawers, the hall closet, every dusty corner of our living space. I cleared away clutter the way I wanted to clear away the memories. That's when I found the box from our son's early days. The photos of me rocking him. The hospital wristband with my name as Father, a pacifier I used to slip into his mouth when he cried. The grief hit me like a sledgehammer. This boy, who'd called me Daddy, wasn't mine. Or at least, not by blood. Tears stunned my eyes, but I shoved that sorrow deep down. The test said what it said. I couldn't bear to see evidence of a lie that large. So I gathered it all. The pictures, the baby blankets, every keepsake. I didn't set them on fire yet, but I came close. Over the next week, Becky hovered around me, sensing something off. She'd ask if I was all right, and I'd just nod, forcing a smile. She'd try to hug me from behind, but I'd slip away. At night, she'd reach for me in bed, and I'd pretend to be asleep. My mind replayed her meeting with Nathan, frame by frame. The way her face lit up when she saw him was like a razor slicing my soul. I couldn't even look at her without tasting bitterness. But Becky didn't push too hard. I suspect guilt haunted her. Maybe she saw the flicker of suspicion in my eyes. She didn't realize I knew everything, though. She thought I was just moody or overworked. When I found a moment alone, I'd replay the memory of that dinner reservation. Table for two. The same candlelit table I'd never shared with her. The irony hammered at my chest. Days stretched into nights, and nights into a strange blur of unspoken tension. Finally, the tension snapped. I came home from a late shift. Becky was in the kitchen, finishing up the dishes. Water dripped from her fingers, shimmering in the overhead light. She turned to me, her expression half worried, half longing. "Tom," she said, "we should talk." I could hear my pulse pounding. "About what?" She dried her hands, carefully hanging the towel. "I just feel you're distant. Did something happen in Boston? You've been..." I cut her off with a clipped tone. "Work's fine." She pressed her lips together, stepped forward, and tried to meet my eyes. "I know when you're lying. You haven't touched me in weeks." Silence. My hand shook with barely contained rage. I forced a laugh, harsh and cold. "You sure you miss me? Doesn't look that way." Her face twitched. "What's that supposed to mean?" Inside, I was screaming. "Say it. Admit it." But I bit my tongue. She reached for my arm, and I recoiled. I saw her eyes flicker with fear, or maybe guilt. It took all my willpower not to lash out with the truth. I wanted her to squirm in uncertainty. Eventually, she turned away, tears pooling in her eyes. "Tom, She didn't finish. She just wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. I stared at her for a moment, then stomped off to the basement, where I knew I'd find distractions. I flicked the lights on and stood there, surveying years of memories. Her high school yearbooks, college trophies, framed letters from students praising her as the teacher who changed my life. Photos of her hugging kids in graduation gowns, sporting broad, proud smiles. An idea formed. I started stacking them into boxes, every last piece of Becky's personal identity. It wasn't enough to physically destroy them. I wanted them gone, banished from my sight. By the time I'd finished, I had a neat row of boxes taped shut. If she noticed, she didn't mention it. Or maybe she was too lost in her own guilt to see the storm gathering. One night, rummaging through old documents, I found the paternity test again, along with a letter from the lab. I read the words, forced them into my brain. No match. A father in name only. The betrayal was scorching. That boy, my boy, was the reason I'd stayed up countless nights, worrying about our finances, planning for his future. All for nothing. Or was it nothing? I couldn't let the love I'd felt for him just vanish. But it was tangled now in a net of deception. The confusion paralyzed me. Finally, I cracked. I took the old baby crib I'd built by hand. I dragged it into the backyard. There's a corner behind the shed where I used to burn branches and leaves. I poured lighter fluid over the crib. My mind screamed at me to stop, but I flicked the rusted lighter. The flames roared up, devouring the wood, spitting out sparks into the night sky. I stood there, feeling the heat scorch my face, tears streaming down my cheeks. I whispered, "Forgive me," though I wasn't sure if I was talking to the child or to myself. Then I grabbed the rocking chair, the one Becky and I had used for late-night feedings. I gave it away to a neighbor's yard sale, not even bothering to haggle. The only thing I couldn't erase were the lullabies still buried in my chest. They clawed at me from the inside, reminding me of a time when hope was all I had. In the following days, Becky noticed the missing items. She asked, "Where's the crib?" I shrugged. "I got rid of it. We don't need it." She looked horrified, but I just walked away. She didn't dare protest. She must have sensed the finality in my voice. I planned my next move. I considered confronting her in front of the entire neighborhood, or booking a table at that same restaurant where she'd met him, just to corner them both. But it felt cheap. I wanted something more permanent, more devastating. My father always told me, revenge is a dish best served cold, though he meant it jokingly about petty spats. Now, I understood the cruel wisdom in that statement. Slowly, I started disposing of all the pictures, vacations, birthdays, everything that bound Becky and me together. Digital, physical, it didn't matter. I wanted no trace of us. If she had memories, let them be fleeting illusions in her mind. If she tried to recall my face, maybe it would become a blur. Late one evening, I was hunched over my laptop, deleting photo albums, burying old emails in the trash folder. Becky stepped in, her voice trembling. "Tom, what are you doing?" I answered without looking at her. "Clearing space." She hovered behind me. "Those are our memories. You can't just throw them away." I whipped around. "Watch me." She stared, tears forming. "You're scaring me. This isn't you." I gave a bitter laugh. "Maybe you never knew me at all." Then I stood up, rushed past her, and left the house. I walked nowhere in particular, just needed air. My heart pounded with a violent mix of rage and something else. Grief. Every step felt like a knife twist in my gut. That night, I hardly slept. Dreams of her with Nathan haunted me, their bodies entwined, her soft moans echoing in my head. I'd jolt awake drenched in sweat, pulse hammering. My chest tightened every time I pictured them, imagining how her skin pressed against his. I thought about confronting Nathan directly, maybe smashing his smug face, but I stopped myself. If I stooped to brawling, I'd lose the war. I wanted my vengeance to be subtle, irreversible, something that would stick in her mind long after I'd gone. The next day, Becky cornered me in the living room, near the dusty piano we never played. "We need to talk," she said, voice quivering. I sank onto the couch, arms folded, eyes cold. "Fine. Talk." She hesitated. Then, with trembling words, she confessed. "I've been seeing someone. I didn't mean for it to happen. But, Nathan," I interrupted, pronouncing his name with a sneer. The color drained from her face. You know." She stammered. I nodded. "I know you booked a table for 2 the night I was out of town. I know you've been meeting him. I know he's probably the father." My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. She crumpled to her knees, sobbing. "Tom, I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I felt lonely." And he listened, and then it turned physical. "But I never wanted to hurt you. Please." I stood abruptly, towering over her. I could feel the tension crackling in my shoulders. My fists balled. "Don't say you didn't want to hurt me. You had every chance to tell me the truth, and you chose lies. The only reason you're confessing now is because you have no other option." She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no pity, just a hollow sense of finality. I don't know what to feel, I said, voice raw. Anger? Disgust. All I know is I'm done. I'm so far beyond caring that your tears don't move me. She looked at me, eyes wide with despair. Tom, we can fix this. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Please. I still love you. I barked a short, humorless laugh. Love? Don't cheapen that word. She kept crying, trying to wrap her arms around my waist. I pushed her off gently but firmly. The part of me that used to worship her, that used to believe in forever, was gone, burned up like that crib. When I started packing my bag, she screamed at me in desperation. You're weak. Men like you always run away from real problems. Her words spat out like bullets. I felt them strike, but they didn't penetrate. I just kept folding clothes, picking a few personal items, a watch, an old photograph of my parents, a chipped coffee mug I couldn't bear to leave behind. She paced, sobbing. We can fix this, she repeated, as though repeating it would make it true. I snapped the suitcase shut. This is beyond repair. You and I. There's nothing left. She grabbed my wrist, nails digging into my skin. You'll regret this, she hissed, tears shining in her eyes. I met her gaze. I won't. Then I walked out. The quiet click of the door behind me felt like the closing of a coffin lid. Outside, night had settled over the neighborhood, the street lamps casting long shadows. My footsteps on the sidewalk sounded too loud. I felt the chill in the air slice through me. But there was also a hint of triumph rising from the pit of my stomach, a faint sense of I survived this. Yet I wasn't finished, not entirely, because Nathan still breathed easy, oblivious to the storm he'd ignited. I drove to the university campus where he taught, parked in a dark corner of the lot. My pulse throbbed with a dangerous intensity. I wasn't sure if I was going to confront him physically or just stare at his office window. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Eventually, I saw him exit the building, leather satchel slung over his shoulder, striding toward his car like he owned the world. I rolled down my window, letting the cold air sting my face. Be still, I told myself. I couldn't bring myself to jump out and pummel him. Something in me wanted a confrontation, but something else wanted to watch him from the shadows, to know that I had all his details, that I could strike when he least expected. He glanced around, probably sensing eyes on him. He paused, scanning the row of vehicles. For a brief second, I swear our eyes locked. My heart thundered, adrenaline racing through my veins. But he couldn't see me clearly. He moved on, slid into his car, and drove away. I exhaled a shaky breath and realized my entire body was trembling. That primal urge for revenge simmered, but how to unleash it? Then it struck me. I could vanish, leaving behind a hole in Becky's life so large that she'd never fill it. She expected me to fight, to rage, to beg for answers. Instead, I'd erase every trace of myself. That was my revenge. She would face the emptiness, the silence, the guilt of never getting closure. Over the next few weeks, I contacted my company to transfer me out of state. They accommodated the request because of my track record. I found a one-bedroom apartment across the country. Nothing fancy, just a place to start fresh. Before leaving, I made sure to delete every shared photo from social media, every digital trace of Tom and Becky. I canceled credit cards, closed joint accounts. I left behind furniture, but took certain personal items. Ragged socks, a broken watch, the rusted lighter that helped me burn the crib. These scraps were all that remained of my old life, and they were mine alone. The day I moved out, Becky called me nonstop. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, sobbing, yelling, begging. Then she tried texting me. We can fix this, we can fix this. Each message I read with numb detachment, then deleted. I listened to one voicemail. Her voice was raw, choked with tears. Please come home. I'll do anything. I felt nothing. Our wedding day once flashed across my mind, Becky in white, me in black, the dream of a perfect life. That dream was ashes now, scattered to the wind. I thought I might cry, but no tears came. I had none left to give. I planned one final act before leaving for good. I sent her a single envelope containing the paternity test results, carefully folded so the bold, damning text was the first thing she'd see. I imagined her reaction. The sudden, suffocating guilt. Maybe she'd keep the paper, trembling, aware that this was my final word. No goodbye letter, no apology, just the cold proof of her betrayal. Then, I changed my phone number, disconnected every link to that old life. I drove off in my car, trunk loaded with the bare essentials. The sun was setting behind me, painting the sky in reds and oranges. It felt symbolic. The end of one life, the start of another. I was done being the fool, the victim. Destroyed, maybe, but also somehow stronger. It took 3 days of driving to reach my new home. Plenty of time to brood. My heart felt heavy, but with each mile, the weight lessened. I found a tiny motel on the outskirts of town where I'd start fresh. The neon sign buzzed overhead. Vacancy, and I smirked at the irony. Inside me, there was a vacancy too, a hollow space left by the betrayal and heartbreak. But maybe I could fill it with something else in time. I checked in, dropped my duffel bag on the floor, and collapsed onto the bed. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, hypnotic circles. My mind replayed everything. The wedding, the dinner reservation, the burning crib, Becky's tear-streaked face, Nathan's smug silhouette, the test results. It all swirled in my head until I felt sick. I closed my eyes, and an unexpected calm washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I breathed freely. No walls caging me in, no constant tension. Just me and the hum of the motel's air conditioner. I found a strange peace in that emptiness. Sure, I was battered, bruised, but not broken. I had survived. Some nights, the memory of that heartbreak might still wake me in a sweat, but at least I was free. Days turned into weeks. I started my new job. People asked polite questions about my background, and I gave polite half-answers. I didn't mention Becky, or the child I once thought was mine. I kept conversations surface level. When I looked in the mirror now, I saw new lines forming around my eyes, a hardness in my gaze. I carried my regrets like invisible weights, but I carried them all the same. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned to the motel to find a letter waiting for me at the front desk. No return address. I opened it in my room, half expecting it to be from Becky. But it wasn't her handwriting. Inside was a short note. I don't know what you did, but Becky's a mess. I hope you can live with yourself. It was signed by a mutual friend, someone who had no clue of the deeper betrayal. I crumpled the note. Of course she was a mess. Let her drown in it. Some might say that's cruel, but I'd reached a point where cruelty felt justified. I'm not proud of that side of me. There was a time I would have bent over backward to comfort Becky, to soothe her tears. But that man was gone. Sex is just sex, but betrayal is an entirely different beast. It eats at your soul, carves out your trust, leaves you hollow. And once you're hollow, the only way forward is to fill yourself with resilience, or bitterness, maybe both. Eventually, I found a small rental house on the outskirts of the city, a place with a creaky porch and a yard I could tend if I felt the urge. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I stacked my few belongings in the living room, feeling the first glimmer of independence. Life settled into a rhythm. I'd wake up, make coffee, go to work, return, maybe watch something mindless on TV. Some nights, I'd think about picking up the phone, calling Becky just to hear her voice. But I never did. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she tried to find me, that she even tracked down my parents in Iowa. They told her they didn't know where I'd gone, which was the truth. I never confided in them about my plans. My father called once, asked if everything was okay. I told him I just needed space, that Becky and I weren't seeing eye to eye, and I left it at that. He asked if he should talk to Becky. I said, "No, Dad. This is my fight." He respected that. Weeks blurred by, and I found myself walking outside at night, staring at the moon, remembering the times I'd rocked that little boy to sleep. Did he ever ask where I went? Or did Becky feed him some story? The thought seared my heart, but I forced it aside. I had to keep going. Then came a phone call at the office, my new number, unlisted. I answered out of habit. The voice on the other end was Becky's. "Tom," she said, "please don't hang up." My grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" Her voice shook. "I have my ways. I need to tell you something. Nathan's gone. He left me. And I'm a mess." A heavy silence. I could almost see her tears. "Tom, I'm so sorry," she continued. "I was wrong, and I'll do anything for you to come back. The boy misses you. I miss you. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I need you to know that I regret everything." My heart pounded. That old, familiar ache flared up. Part of me wanted to scream at her, tear into her with every ounce of fury. But I just took a deep breath. "Why are you calling me now?" She sniffled. "Because I know I ruined us, but I can't live with myself if I don't try to fix it. Please, say something." I steadied my voice, though it trembled. "We're done, Becky. Nothing's changed. You made your choice when you crawled into his arms. I can't undo that. Neither can you." She sobbed quietly. "I know," she whispered. "I just had to try." My vision blurred with tears I refused to shed. "Don't call me again." Click. I placed the phone down gently, then walked to the restroom and splashed cold water on my face. The reflection that stared back at me looked resolute, but there was a flicker of sadness in my eyes. I whispered to myself, this is how it had to be. Nathan vanished from her life as easily as he arrived. People like him often do. A short burst of excitement, then on to the next conquest. Becky was left in the ruins, but those ruins weren't my responsibility anymore. I'd given her everything, my trust, my heart, my fatherhood. She'd repaid me with betrayal, so I cut her off completely. Sometimes, though, the nightmares return. I see that dinner reservation with his name next to hers, the candlelight flickering across their faces, their hands entwined. I see them locked in a passionate embrace, her moaning softly. I hear a child's voice calling me Daddy, but then everything goes silent. I jolt awake, drenched in sweat, the taste of bile on my tongue. I find myself shivering in the dark, the same dark that once felt comforting. Now it's a reminder of what I lost. But with each passing day, the pain eases, replaced by a steely sense of purpose. I read somewhere that suffering can either break a man or forge him into steel. I'm not sure which path I'm on, but I do know that the old Tom died in that moment I saw Becky with Nathan. What's left is a version of me that won't ever beg or trust so blindly again. I moved again after a few months, to a city where no one knew me. I found an apartment overlooking a park, a quiet place where I can watch the sunset every evening. I finally canceled my old phone plan, severing that last tie to the life I had. The furniture I've got now is secondhand. My coffee table is a repurposed trunk I found at a flea market. Oddly enough, I like it that way, weathered, worn, but still standing. I often remember the day I burned the crib, the heat against my face, the smell of charred wood. It was like a funeral pyre for everything I believed in. Yet, in that destruction, I discovered something unexpected. I wasn't truly alone. I still had myself. Broken, yes, but alive. And in that lonely vigil by the flames, I vowed never to let someone wield that power over me again. If love is a risk, I'll be damn sure I can handle the consequences next time. Night after night, I return to the memory of Becky in her wedding dress, smiling as though the world belonged to us. A pang of nostalgia hits me, followed by a wave of bitterness. I wonder if she ever looks back at that moment and regrets the path she took. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. Either way, it doesn't change the future. There are times I catch myself humming a lullaby under my breath. I clamp my mouth shut, as if singing it would summon the ghosts of what might have been. Sometimes I let it slip out in fragments, a note or two, a murmur of comfort. Then I shake it off, returning to my new life. I'm not sure if I'll ever forgive Becky or Nathan. Probably not. The wound is too deep. But I don't need their apology or their regret to move on. In the end, I learned that sex might be just sex, but betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound. It unravels your identity, leaves you uncertain of who you are. Yet, somehow, I found that the path to rebuilding begins the moment you decide enough. Enough lies, enough pain, enough illusions. That's when the healing starts, one agonizing step at a time. I don't know if I'll ever see Becky again. Sometimes, in a quiet moment, I imagine her searching my face in a crowded airport, hoping for reconciliation or closure. She won't find it. I've erased myself from her world. I think that's what hurts her the most, that I've become nothing but a phantom, a reminder of the life she destroyed. So here I stand, on the other side of devastation, still scared but far from powerless. Part of me died back there, but another part was reborn. Colder, sharper, less naive. If I could go back to that wedding day, would I stop myself from saying I do? Maybe. Or maybe it all needed to happen for me to understand that illusions can be comforting. But truth, no matter how brutal, is what sets you free. Yes, I was destroyed. But now I'm stronger, and I'd do it all again. Except this time, I'd leave well before the table for two.